Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. Today is the first time we're featuring an MG on the channel. It's not the first Chinese sourced or whatever Chinese owned vehicle brand that we've ever spoken about. That would be, I think, the BYD Seal.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we're featuring an MG on the channel. I do believe we had a Comet in the office for a while, but I don't think the story came together. I think the rain started last year, logistics happened, and then we just never got back to it. So today, it's the turn for the MG Windsor, and our resident expert Kartikeya is here, having freshly driven this badass car, battery as a service car, and we're going to discuss a lot of stuff. And the battery as a service is going to be an important part of the discussion because it's a very cool idea, and it has a few pros and a few cons. We'll get to it.
Okay, I was going to tell him that you start off with all the MG and Windsor jokes straight up. Let's get that done with.
Look. If a car company is primarily a Shanghai automotive owned company that has an Indian arm called Morris Garages, Morris being a British name, which is now partly owned by Jindal Steel, which is an Indian company, and they choose to name their vehicles after British castles and stuff. Honestly, I don't know that I need to make jokes about this. I think the Comet, therefore, is a very normal sounding name. The ZS is even better. But Windsor...
Windsor definitely to me though is tone deaf.
Yeah.
I don't be reminded about the colonial Raj effectively.
Think about how many connotations there are, right? East India Company on one side, right? Shanghai Automotive on the other side.
I want Jaguar to make a car, name it Kohinoor, and send it to the UK.
For which you'll have to wait at least a year and a half, because I think Jaguar's on a year-long break because they just have too many cars in the dealerships and they're not selling fast enough.
They're waiting for their EVs to come. Yeah. Okay, and EVs. So we'll start off with Windsor.
Sure.
Okay. There are lots of things that we will have to cover, so I'll try and do this quickly. First, the snapshot. There are 2-3 things with the car that are issues.
Okay.
Not deal breakers, but there are some issues.
Right.
There is one reason to not buy this altogether.
Okay.
And there is one reason why this entire conversation is also pointless. Okay, so that is, I will park that for later, but that's one part.
And I thought I was the critical one.
No, because there really is a lot to talk about this car. Okay, now, the car itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if we spoke about this on Disconnect a little while ago, saying that we need more players in India.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We need good car makers, people delivering solid products, right? Well-rounded products. This is a shining example of that.
Okay.
Okay. From the small things, like my first set of notes is, it's always the small things that you touch and feel and try, right? So I got into the car and used the power windows, auto up down, all 4 windows, smooth, fast power windows, quiet. So the small things that point towards quality. The sunblinds, the visors, good quality again, which you would, till not too long back, you would have looked at and said that that's from a premium car. The finish of plastics, like I was just thinking, pegging this, where does this fit? Okay. For me, it's second to Kia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because from Kia, there is a step down to Hyundai, and Hyundai is good. But this is there. So like in the car, they have this wood type finish on the dashboard, which isn't wood at all, it's plastic. But it looks so good that when you reach out to touch it, you're expecting texture.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Right? And all the other plastics are consistent and good quality feel to it. I miss talking about it on the outside because for me, it looks like an MPV, but it's not that big. It's that mono volume kind of shape. I like the design. I think that they have managed to, people have talked about what it looks like. I think what it reminded me most of was the Fiat Multipla, which was like this.
I love the Multipla. Yeah.
It's a unique looking thing. And this is, I think, a modern version of that. And it's nice. It looks futuristic enough. It looks quirky enough. It looks cool enough. I think it's a nice design and I enjoyed it. The issue with the design was that MG had a whole bunch of accessories on the car, like blacked out bits going around, or around the fog lamps and on the sides, on the doors and all of that, rub strips and things like that. Those look tacky. Okay, so those, they are accessories. I checked with them. They're not part of the car by default. If they are, ask the dealer to not fit them. If for any reason, if that becomes a conversation, I think the car will look much better without them.
You would have been happy if they were chrome instead.
No.
I'm just checking.
I would be happy if they just disappeared. That's it. So exterior design works, quality looks good. Interior, of course, the big talking point will be the kind of equipment it has and stuff like that. So one of the things is the touchscreen, which is a 15.6-inch screen, 15.6 inches, and the smaller one, which is the one you'll get from the base variant, is 14 inches.
Nice.
So, or something like that. It's the base variant also gets a 7-inch driver's infotainment screen. The higher variants get 8-inch.
But does the driver need infotainment or just information?
Sorry, the driver's instrument cluster, not infotainment. Sorry.
No, look. I asked this question in all seriousness, not that I was going to trip up Karthik, because it is entirely possible for car manufacturers today to think that the driver requires infotainment. And when they have autonomy, they will need infotainment. What else are they going to do sitting there, right?
Well, on that note, this car doesn't get ADAS.
Okay.
Happy? I'm happy that it doesn't have that. So it gets all this wow factor. 15 inches, it's massive.
Yeah.
It's just plain massive.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other reason why this car...
No, you will not write that comment. I know what you're going to type. You're not going to type that comment. I'm telling you right now.
God. Okay. Now I got it. Now I got it. Okay. In this, now the other reason why this is a great example is that there are only 3 variants of this car. They have weird names like Excite, Excellence, and
Exuberance.
Something. So I don't even remember how they stack up, but there are 3 variants. 3 variants. Each variant feels good.
Okay.
So your base variant is well equipped. If you buy that, and we'll talk about pricing and BAS, especially the BAS bit later. But quite simply, the base variant that I'm talking about gets 6 airbags, ESP, traction control, hill hold, all of that. The only thing it misses out compared to the other variants in terms of safety tech that I would have liked is that the other ones get a proper tire pressure monitoring system. This gets a tire deflation warning system.
Right.
It doesn't get a reversing camera or 360-degree camera. This car goes straight from no reversing camera. It has rear parking sensors. And the next variant straight gets 360-degree camera.
Okay.
It's like that. So even the base variant is well equipped. And this is 10 lakh rupees with the battery as a service.
Okay.
If you don't want to take that subscription feature of the battery and just want to buy it outright, it's 13.5 lakhs.
Okay.
So irrespective of which variant you choose, the extra that you have to pay if you want to buy outright is 3.5 lakh rupees for the battery.
Understood.
So it's a very simple plan.
In that sense.
It's a very...
Until we come to BAAS as a whole discussion, in which case it's slightly more complex. But okay, fundamentally, base car plus BAAS, 3.5 lakh rupees is the delta. Correct. Whether you pay 3.5 lakh rupees and own the battery or you don't.
Correct.
Okay.
And the steps through the 3 variants is 1 lakh rupees.
Okay.
So you go from 13.5, 14.5, 15.5.
Superb.
For the top spec variant.
Superb.
And at that price, the top spec variant is incredible value.
Okay.
Incredible value, right? From the sense of quality it has, everything that it's packing in, how it feels like a quality car.
Okay.
Okay. So for that amount of money, it's a lot of car.
Okay.
Because I know I was a little taken aback when it before it got launched. I saw some posts and tweets talking about this being a Nexon rival, and I think that may have just been clever communication from MG.
Okay.
Because in terms of size, this is a Creta size car.
Oh, really? Whatever few pictures I've seen of it, I didn't think that it was that large a car.
Oh, no, it's a big car.
Okay.
Like in terms of wheelbase, it's massive.
So it's not a small building, it's a castle.
Yeah. It's one section of the castle for sure. So its wheelbase is 2700 mm or something like that. So basically it's longer than a Nexon in terms of the wheelbase. It's longer than a Curve in terms of the wheelbase. It is a big...
Why are you saying Curve and Nexon separately? I think they're the same car.
Wheelbase thoda alag hai. So there's that much of a difference.
If you don't know that joke, you have to see our Curve MotorInc First, IC and electric both.
Yeah. So it is a bigger vehicle. I think MG quite cleverly positioned it there by maybe the right kind of communication, saying that, that this is a Nexon rival, because in terms of pricing, it's a Nexon rival.
Yes.
But in terms of size, it's a
Creta
Creta rival. So the vehicle where it's positioned in terms of value with the 3 variants, everything great, clean. I think you can easily find the variant that works for you and go for it. I would by default think of the base or then the top spec, because the difference isn't much.
Yeah.
And in the top spec, you get ventilated seats. You get those leatherette seats, of course. And yes, that's the other talking point, those fancy seats. This is the one thing I'm not entirely convinced about.
Okay.
The seats to me looked cool, but I had big reservations about it. Have you seen any pictures of it? Okay. So they're like, like those old sofas where you'd have those button tabs in and they'd have that poofy kind of structure to them. They're like that.
All of them? All the seats?
All the seats.
Okay.
All the seats. So immediately you think you're going to sink into them and they're going to be floppy and all of that. Good news, they're not like that. Okay. But, and I spent the entire day in that in the car, in which I did not find them to be uncomfortable.
But you weren't blown away either.
Yeah, I don't think they're the best seats that I would use for long distances. And that is the question that we'll come to. Is this a car for long distances or not? The thing is that the poofy bits end up creating a ridge, right? So there will invariably be pressure points.
Got it.
And depending on how you're built, they're likely to be more in that scenario.
Okay.
I expected them to be uncomfortable in corners. That was not the case. The seat back held you nicely. The seat base was okay, not great, but okay. So that was the one thing that has been a highlight in a lot of the conversations, was a red flag for me. Turns out it's okay. It's not a problem.
Okay.
The great thing is that car that looks big on the outside feels big on the inside as well.
Okay.
There is a lot of space, whether you're in the front or in the back.
5 seats only?
5 seats. It's not a 3-row, it's a 2-row. There's been, the seats got a lot of attention because of that shape and the fact that they recline and all of that. And this is something I think you should be wary of as well. Because when even the High Cross came out, everybody was like, oh, it's got Ottoman seats and you can kick your feet out and do all of that. It doesn't work. I'm 5'6" and I can barely stretch out in the High Cross, right? When you're using that seat, I have to push the front seat all the way forward. I have to push the middle seat all the way back, which means the front seat is gone, front passenger seat. The rear passenger seat is gone. And even then, my feet are touching the front seat when I'm extended like this, right?
Okay.
So it's a nice conversation piece that you have those reclined seats and you can do that, but is it really something that you can use once in a while for a laugh? Sure, right?
Yeah, but in some ways, here comes the first MG joke, but in some ways, I think this whole car is a conversation piece, right?
Why so?
Think about it, right? Let's say I buy one of these Windsors and somebody says, so what car do you own? I have an AMG. Okay, I just added one extra article in there and look at the depth of that sentence. I have an AMG.
Oh, wow, man.
Which AMG do you have? The Windsor. The Windsor's not an AMG. No, I said I have a MG Windsor. It sounds like AMG Windsor.
Pronunciation was slightly off, but it works.
So I don't see why the seats being poofy and reclinable, etc., can't be a conversation piece. I mean, I think it's valid, right?
Yeah. So the good thing is that the lower variants will have regular fabric seats, the base variant. And for me, that is one of the reasons why I would pick the base and not go for the mid-level variant, because that gets these leatherette seats but without the ventilation function.
Right. And leatherette without ventilation means either the AC is to be on all the time or you're going to be sweating a little bit all the time.
Correct. And we will talk about the AC shortly, but first I'll finish the space angle. So the back seat, nice, wide, lots of knee room. Floor is completely flat. So all of the stuff that you'd expect from an EV. Having said that, and I got the opportunity to drive this, and I was then being ferried around in a High Cross right after that. So I could draw nice comparisons.
I love how Toyota sort of is subsumed into all of these launches because that's the logistics vehicle, right?
Yeah, correct. And it was good because when I sat in the Windsor, my thought was that this is very spacious.
Right.
But I didn't like the under thigh support so much. And again, for me, at my height, which means for taller people, it'll definitely feel less than ideal.
Right.
you can stretch out, but not that much because there is something under the front seats. I think it's the battery, a little bit of the battery there. So you can't really push in under the front seats. So it limits how much you can stretch out as well, but it's not uncomfortable.
Got it.
Point number one as to why it may not be ideal for long distances. Okay. I sat in the high cross at the end of the day, and I realized that the high cross itself is also not that high. But the high cross's advantage again is it has that much more room, so you can stretch out that much more.
Right.
So you manage to find a comfort space. So this as a backseat is pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be a taller occupant traveling for longer, this is something that you will want to keep in mind. Boot space. The claim figure is some 600 liters or something like that.
Up to what? 3 inches from the roof.
The catch there is that they are also measuring the space under the floor,
Okay.
which is where the spare wheel would usually be. I've got a pic of that over there. I think they've got the subwoofer unit or something like that over there. I forget right now. So there is a lot of space under the floor, which you can use for soft luggage. But the thing is, it's something you have to work around, but it is a decent boot any which way.
Right. So the marketing measurement is overcommitting, but it's not a bad boot anyway.
Correct.
And by marketing measurement, it's started by Hyundai, who started measuring the boots all the way to the roof of the car, which we don't like, which is I call it the marketing measurement of the boot. So it'll say some stupid 672 liters. And then you'll actually measure it to the top of the seat, which is what you should be doing. If you do that, it's still a very nice number, like 450 liters or 500 liters, something like that. That's the engineering measurement. And now we have the third angle where they're even going underneath and say, yes, subwoofer nikal ke, we'll measure that also.
There's no spare wheel. So that's the reason why that space is so empty.
Good job.
So you have plenty of storage space, not the largest if you just use the floor and above, but with the space underneath, it's a lot and you can use it. So a pretty practical car.
Right.
From a family use standpoint as well, in terms of the space, the luggage space, the comfort that's available in the car for all kinds and sizes of drivers.
Got it.
Okay. As a machine to travel with, what would the catch be, right? We spoke about the backseat angle. Second is the heat factor. Now, this car has been localized in India, which is, I think they've got about 20%, which is basics like wheels, tires, the glass, and stuff like that. And their plan, MG's plan, is to take it up to 60-80%.
Okay.
That is their plan. Now, in this, what I felt that day, and this is a funny thing, okay? I didn't realize, but I was falling sick that day. So at first, when I kept feeling the heat, I thought, okay, it's just that I'm falling sick, and which is why it is, I'm feeling this way, right? I'm feeling hot in the car all the time. And the more time I spent with it, I was like, no, man, because, you know, when it would get cloudy, then you go fine. And the second you moved out of the clouds, the sunlight like literally hit you. You would be like, I'm burning now. So the car, the windows, I think they need UV cut glasses for sure.
Which doesn't have.
Which it doesn't have enough of it. So when I asked, do they not have this functionality? This we're not sure. We're going to have to get back. But from the experience, I can tell you that it's not enough, even if it is there.
So did they get back to you on the UV cut thing? No.
No, they haven't.
Okay.
What it doesn't have, and what I realized was in the boot of the car were a whole set of sunshades, the clip-on variety, which were removed thankfully. So clearly this problem they are aware of. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting there in the back. But I'm glad they didn't fit it on the car because that just spoils the experience. So, and it's that MPV style, so it's got lots of glass, right? The windscreen is big, the windows are big.
It's called a big greenhouse for a reason.
Yeah, correct. It's a big greenhouse. And it felt like the greenhouse effect. 100%.
And the green refers to the electric vehicle, obviously.
Good one. So the heat factor was something that you felt clearly.
So the AC is not effective, or the glass is the issue, which is...
I think it's a combination of both. I don't think that the glass is doing a good enough job. And in Delhi, Gurugram, on a hot afternoon,
you suffered a bit.
Yeah. And the AC struggled to cool the cabin. It took a long time for it to get the cabin down to a reasonably cool temperature. Okay. So that is factor number 2 for long distance travel, which will be a challenge.
Okay.
Third, so these are, the backseat wasn't really an issue for me. I'm just letting you know
It's a
about
bench
It's a bench.
and there's no captain seats.
No, there's not.
But Windsor, I'm royalty. I want a 4-seater.
They could and should do
Me
that.
and the Queen will sit at the back, and James will drive us to our destination in the Windsor Royal Edition or whatever, right? No, no.
Blue edition, blue blood, blue blood. Anyways, okay, no captain seat version, but now that you reminded me, it does the cool factor in this one thing, and which is good to see. It has a panoramic glass roof.
With UV cut or not?
So that was fine. So that is one of the reasons why I don't think it was my health issue. It was the glass itself, because the radiation from there was not the problem. It was the radiation that you felt from the sides. That glass is cutting out the heat fairly well. It has a shade also on it. And it's a fixed glass roof. So you can't actually open up the roof.
You know we have a population problem in India, right?
You're flipping it around. Oh, I didn't see that one coming.
And MG, since you're probably watching MotorInc First for the first time, this time the joke's not on you. It's on everybody else.
Oh my god. Okay, I didn't see that one coming. So yeah, it's got a fixed glass roof, so it's nice to see that as a solution, and I think that's a great solution if people want the wow factor of that airiness and functionality-wise. That I do appreciate that the sense of room it creates, but without the safety.
And there is no mechanism that will get clogged because you never use the sunroof. It's too hot, etc., etc. It's fixed. It's closed. It's done.
Correct.
Awesome.
So that way. Now, which brings us to the two other problems, right? So the heat aspect in the cabin is the one thing. The other two things are to do with the digital life of this car.
And the digital life of this car.
Yeah. So, yeah. The 15-inch touchscreen.
Yes.
It's massive.
Yes.
Right? Which is good.
Yeah.
But it feels, and there's no better way to put it, but this is the, and okay, I'm going to be fair. We've always said China mal, Chinese stuff, right? The way this car is built, if this is Chinese mal, then people are in trouble. Car makers will be in trouble because this is a good standard.
Yeah.
But the traditional Chinese mal wala feeling comes through that touchscreen.
Software.
It just feels, right?
What is the UI, UX? Is the design? Is the speed? It's all of it?
So it hung on me. So it hung on me. Then the UI that it has feels very, that, you know. It has the 360-degree camera, which is ridiculous. I did take a photo of it, of course. But basically, when you use the 360-degree camera and you're turning, so it shows the car as part of the view. Yeah. And when you're turning, it's giving you that side view. But the wheels are fixed, right? So it's just like it's moving like that. It looks so strange. So small things like that, right? Which make it feel cheap. Okay. The bigger issue on this front is that this car has done away with buttons practically altogether.
Okay.
Globally, it doesn't even have controls for the air conditioning system. In India, we do have some controls for that. Everything else is controlled either through the touchscreen or through the driver's steering wheel buttons.
Okay.
And it is a nightmare. Like while driving, I don't know what all settings I changed just trying to adjust the rearview mirrors, because even the rearview mirror adjustment is wrong. On the drive, you know, so when we go for these drives, the journalists that have been invited for this, they are added to a WhatsApp group where they share the essential information. One of the PDFs was how to use the different functionalities. Right? How do you adjust the mirrors? Yeah. I wanted to change the volume and I ended up adjusting mirrors. I ended up canceling cruise control. And it's like when you're using cruise control, some of the other functions cannot be used. So this is ridiculous.
Okay, so that means that you have to have a fair warning. If you see an MG Windsor on the road for the next few months, steer clear. They may be pressing the wrong buttons. And as time passes, these people will get used to their buttons. What will probably happen is they'll just ignore 30% or 40% of their functions depending on their willingness to play with these systems and use the rest. But when you see a new MG Windsor post that period, you have to again give it a wide berth, because they might be pressing the wrong buttons.
So it's literally like if I got used to driving the Windsor and I bought one, every family member would have to get that training. How do you adjust the ORVMs?
Right.
How do you start cruise control? And then you make one mistake and it's like, oh, I don't know where I am. I have to stop the car and then look at the screen and figure out where the hell I am.
Right.
So that is a little bit of, unnecessary. It's an unnecessary distraction in an otherwise good car, right? There was no need to do this extreme. Oh wait, it's really ridiculous. Like ORVMs can't be adjusted, and sunroof, the shade, that's also through the touchscreen, and it's like one of those. You know how the music equalizer bar graphs are? It's like that. So you can tap, so it'll open that much. You tap there, then it'll open that much. Or you can obviously go directly. But all these controls are through that. To adjust to switch on the ventilation function is through the touchscreen. Everything is.
So you can't say, hello AMG, close my sunroof and stuff.
So the one thing that I would want, yeah, you can do some of that. But the one thing that I would have wanted was like, do you have the command function for turning on the ventilated seats?
And don't they?
No, they don't have that.
Cool my ass.
That would be easy one.
Or heat my ass.
Voice commands are there. I'm sure they showed me something. But as usual with most voice commands, it's not natural for me, at least. Because you have to learn the system and on a first drive, it's not.
No, you're not understanding. What? They've made the UI UX complicated with buttons because they want you to talk to the Windsor. The British royalty who actually live in the castle, they're not pressing buttons to get stuff done. They're telling people what to do.
James.
I need a drink, and then somebody brings them a drink. It's not like press this button, scroll up. Okay, I want a bigger glass, scroll more. No.
Yeah. So
it's the royal experience.
Actually, while you were talking all of this, it just struck me what I said was wrong. Now, the worst thing that can happen is either MG or Jack makes a Kohinoor and sends it to India.
Makes a Kohinoor. First, just return the one that they have, which is ours.
They'll say we made a motor and sent in yellow Kohinoor. Anyways, okay, back to the Windsor. And so this is the other thing, which is a problem. Okay, and it's a genuine problem. It eats into your experience. This is a learning curve that I don't want. And I don't want to have to sit and teach, let's say, my father, my mother, and my sister, my wife, my uncle, how to use the damn buttons to adjust the mirrors.
Right.
This is not needed.
Correct.
Okay. You also get powered seats, which is good. Okay, nice. So equipment-wise, it's really good. And for the money, what it's giving you is a lot.
Okay.
So it's really redrawing expectations, and this is without taking BAS into account. Okay, I'm saying at 15.5 lakh rupees, it's a lot of car for the money. What is not a lot is the battery pack, which is 40 kilowatt hours, which is as much. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Sorry. Which is 40 kilowatt hours. It's got 136 PS motor. This is not the same motor as the ZS.
Okay.
The ZS offers a lot more power. And I checked with them. They said that it's not just a derated motor. It's an altogether different motor.
Isn't the ZS less expensive than this car?
No, ZS is more expensive.
Okay.
ZS is interestingly a smaller sized car than it. But it has more performance and it has more range.
Okay.
It's a smaller size car though. But it is more expensive given the rest of the hardware.
Okay.
So the battery pack is 40 kilowatt hours. That's not great. Their claim range is about 330, which is again not great.
So it's 200 something real world.
Yeah. So in the time that I used it, till the point that I took photographs, I had covered 60. I had used up 60% of the range. Again, wide use case. I spent a lot of time in the city. I went out onto Leopard Trail. I also went out onto the expressway, did all of that. So mix of conditions. In 60%, I traveled about 120 kilometers.
Okay.
And I had clearly 40% remaining, in which I would have done, let's say, another 80 kilometers. So
200, 210 real world.
I think what most people should be able to get from this is 220 to 240. I think that for general city usage is doable.
Okay.
But that's not a big number.
No.
So again, as an all-rounder for the family, if you're looking at it, because it's spacious, it's big, it's well-appointed, this and that, all of it, the battery pack is what's going to hold you back from saying, it's not convincing enough.
It sounds like an urban MPV.
Yes, correct. So that is the third real hitch with this package.
Did MG talk about larger battery pack being an option and stuff?
Yes. So they have internationally, this car comes with a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. Another 10 kilowatt hours, if you're looking at it, let's say, is at least another 50 to 60 kilometers, at least, right? So that brings it closer to the 300 mark, where it starts becoming a
Realistic first car.
yeah.
And still at the baseline of it, still not in the comfort area, because to us that is about 350 odd real world, not the rated range.
So now this, okay, we're going to get rid of all the cons first. Now this is the wider view issue with this product right now for me. I would love to say that go buy this car, and there are reasons to do that. Aside from the ones that we've already spoken about the quality, how well made it is, and all of that. Aside from that, I would love for you to just say, go and buy this. This is a good pick for you. We'll discuss why. But my question here, and this is something we spoke recently, we didn't use it in our disconnect, or it was on an MF. I was telling Shumi that, my brother had called and he was asking that he wants to buy an EV. What should he do? So I told him, yeah, sure, you buy an EV next year. And I said that you keep saying that for the next few years for sure. Maybe all the way till 2030, right? And this is a great example why. Back then, I had said that my concern was that at the end of the 8-year cycle, when you're done, when you're out of warranty for your battery pack, and if something were to happen, who will provide you a battery replacement?
Yeah.
It's no longer, if I'm the car maker, it's no longer my liability, right? Post 8 years, right? MG's come and just stick to that argument, because now they're offering you a lifetime warranty on the battery pack of this Windsor. So if you buy a Windsor, it doesn't matter how long you've owned the car, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. If you have an issue with the battery, they will provide a replacement.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Right? So that's not really a problem, right? The problem with all this is a highly evolving and competitive environment. So as soon as MG came with this positioning of it being a Nexon rival, Tata woke up and Tata came up with the Nexon 45 kilowatt hour, which is the base battery pack from the Curve.
Correct.
Remember we discussed this?
Yep.
So that car gets a 500 something kilometer range, which means suddenly the Nexon has become like this incredible EV if you really want to use an EV a lot. So through the creation of value, we are also seeing destruction of value.
Yeah.
Right? And in this process of Tata bringing the Nexon 45, they also dropped prices of the Nexon.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
And to me, right now, the question is, it's great that I have this lifetime warranty on the battery pack, and I love that aspect of it. Let's say I buy this, and tomorrow MG is to bring the 50 kilowatt hour version at the same price.
Yeah, so I think the point he's making is not as much don't buy an EV today, but he's saying buy an EV with your eyes and ears open today. You're in a cycle where value structures will change very, very rapidly.
Absolutely.
Where resale value structures are almost completely unknown. Where your ability to predict that a used EV that you're buying tomorrow, battery pack degradation has reached which level is a little bit uncertain, a little bit difficult for you to establish where is it at, how much warranty is left. And in some cases, two-wheelers especially, a lot of warranties are just for the first owners. It doesn't even exist for the second owner, which you'll have to re-verify for each of these considerations. So what he's basically saying is, if the Windsor looks right to you, buy it. But you be sure that tomorrow a rival will fundamentally change what you think of the value of the purchase that you just made, or MG will respond to a competitor and change the value structure again. Now in the Toyota Innova's case, if you think about it, they kept raising the prices, which kept the values of their used Innovas kept going up predictably, reliably, and over time it has become a safe thing to buy used. This is the opposite. Your car is probably going to look worse within months of you buying the car. Not because your car has something wrong with it, but because the competitors have re-evaluated their proposition and then they had to re-evaluate the proposition also. So you're going to say, I bought the 40 kilowatt hour battery. And look, they just bought out the 45 kilowatt hour battery. And for some of you, it will happen in the space of a week where you bought it and then it changed. It happened today morning.
Oh yeah.
Yesterday, as we record this yesterday, KTM announced the TFT screen coming to the 200 Duke.
200. Yeah.
Today morning, somebody wrote that they took delivery of their bike 4 days ago.
Oh God.
And they are heartbroken that they didn't get the TFT. Now, I understand the manufacturer's perspective. They can't tell you. But this guy is feeling like, if I just waited 4 days, and there's nothing you can do, really.
Yeah. And so this is exactly what's happened with the Nexon owners. I'm just going to move on from that quickly. The Nexon EV is new, right? It's less than a year old or about a year old, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But in this short time that it's been around, it's had price cuts. And now you're seeing hardware updates to it as well.
Yeah.
Which means if I bought that not too long ago for a lower price or for the same price, I'm getting a better Nexon today.
Yeah.
Which isn't a good feeling.
Yeah, and yeah, you're not going to feel good about this.
So all I'm saying is, if you're buying an EV, especially in the mass market space, this kind of innovation and change is something that is and should happen. But just be prepared that you are likely to feel a bit shortchanged every time something new comes, because this is an evolving field. And which is why my point is, if you're buying an EV, be clear that you're going to clock a lot of kilometers. So the economics are always in your favor then. Unless that is the case, admit that it is something that you're buying as a toy thing for the experience of it. And so the money is not a big deal.
Right.
Okay. Now with all of that out of the way, we leave BAS for the last.
Sure.
The car. This is not just a well-made car. It's a car that drives well. It is a mature package in the way it drives.
Okay.
And Shumi, in the small things, man, and that's the beauty of it. Like the way the regen works, right? So natural. So natural. Because nowhere did I feel that it was overstepping or was it not in tune with my expectations. So in the different modes, of course, the regen, the way it comes in, you can also, in the different modes, you can set up saying that, so let's say in normal mode, the throttle response is more than in eco mode. But I want the regen to be lower or whatever, I can adjust that. There are 3 or 4 steps. You can adjust it that way. The regen worked so nicely. Okay. It was so intuitive that it just felt like it was assisting. It did not feel like that switchy thing where it comes on suddenly, so it feels too sharp or something like that.
Yeah.
It felt natural.
Nice.
It felt good to drive. And for me, that small thing was such a good part of the experience. The steering is light in eco mode. In normal, it's fine, but always there's a feel for the car, and it's a big car. And I did push it, right? It felt controlled. It felt predictable for a big car like this, like the front end.
Yeah.
After a point, if you push it hard, you can feel the size of it and all, and which is then you're like, okay, take it easy, but it stays clean. Okay. The other good part, the suspension. When you first start off, you feel that it's softy, so it's like going over stuff and it's like soaking stuff up better than you expect. You're like, that's not a good thing, right? Which means once you really get moving,
then body roll and all nonsense will happen.
All hell is gonna break loose. No.
Controlled. Nice.
I accidentally ended up on a service road which ended up in nothingness, and it was what do we call that? When they break down buildings and they take all the brick and stuff like that.
So expressway. Sorry, I know we are better than that now.
If you visit Goa, you know the difference. So I ended up the service road, ended up into a road made out of that, which had full difference in height from this side track to this side. There were bricks sticking out like angles like that, and each thought was like, no man, I said that looks like it's gonna go straight for the battery pack, like that. So on that note, 186 millimeters of claimed ground clearance. Point is, went over all of that with care, but it was rough. At no point through that did it feel ill-mannered, that it couldn't be driven easily through all of that. It worked well in that scenario.
Nice. Okay.
And after that, I got onto the expressway. And I also spent time in the backseat on roads like that. You're expecting to get tossed. And there was this one point where the person was driving. He didn't read the road up ahead quite as well. It looked like a light bump. So we're carrying a decent speed, but it was bigger than expected. So the you felt that this is a big one. But I didn't get tossed out of the backseat, and I was the only thing in the rest of the car, so it was not loaded. So it managed to offer control. If I break it down, you may read other reports, because this is something that was discussed with me, that it feels a bit firm at times, it feels a bit soft at times. Yes, it does. But the point is, what is the outcome? It's soft when it needs to be, it's controlled when it has to be. Yes, there are those moments here and there, but that's fine.
Okay.
For this kind of car, I think what it's managing to pull off overall in terms of its behavior is mature.
Right.
And again, so the package ties in together as a well-made vehicle on so many fronts. The misses, we've already discussed. The only one that I missed, which is again a small one, but ties in with the same idea that it's a more of an urban vehicle in my head right now, is that the tire noise was also a fair bit. I would have expected better sound insulation. I would want better sound insulation. I would want better cabin cooling. I would want sun blinds if I wanted to use this on a regular basis. I would want a larger battery pack if I really wanted to travel with. So that just kind of rounds off the things that it needs to do better to become that all-purpose family car.
Got it.
So drives well. Electric drivetrain is good. Mechanical other parts are good. Steering, suspension, all of it was good. 18-inch wheels on this one, the top spec variant that we used. So not bad. So the lower variants, which I get 17 or something like that, would be even better.
Right.
So nice car that way. Now we come to BAS. So,
Bas kya?
Bus kya? Bus kya? You will say bus kya sometime. There are enough of these details. So there was a lot of confusion around this, and I think we've got a reasonable amount of clarity on what this BAS system is. So effectively, if you're looking to buy a Windsor and you want BAS, what happens is that you're taking a loan effectively of the battery pack. Right? So MG has tied up with 4 providers, service providers, finance companies, which will offer you this BAS service. Now they all keep talking about 3.5 rupees per kilometer of usage, and all of them seem to be offering the same rate and stuff like that, except for one. I'll explain how they are. It's interesting how it's all worked out, because there's Bajaj, which offers 3.5 rupees per kilometer.
Auto finance, not auto.
Yeah, Bajaj Finance, and their packages that you pay for 1,500 kilometers a month, which works out to 5,000 something rupees every month. Right? Now, it sounds like, why do I need to do that? Now, the interesting thing is in Bajaj's case, they're saying you pay me 5,000 rupees a month. That's the slab. But if you use 2,000 kilometers or 3,000 kilometers, that's fine by me. It doesn't make a difference to me.
You're paying for a minimum of 1,500 kilometers, not a maximum of 1,500 kilometers. Okay.
So each of the plans you'll see is tailored to a certain kind of use case.
Okay.
So then there is the other one is Hero, I think. And in their case, it also has this similar thing, 1,500 kilometers into 3.5. And in their case, if you, it's averaged over 3 months. So it's 4,500 kilometers over 3 months. So every quarter they will balance out this payment, whatever.
So per month 1,500 is not critical, but over a quarter 1,500 per month is critical.
Correct.
Okay.
So over a quarter you'll have 4,500 kilometers to use up
as a block.
Now let's say you used only 4,000 in the first quarter, and in the second quarter you used 5,000. So you went 500 over in the next one. They get balanced out.
Got it.
So you get credit kilometers out of that. And the interesting thing in this also is, if you end up spending more, let's say you travel 6,000 kilometers, so it's gone way past everything, and you end up paying extra for those kilometers, that reduces your loan on the battery pack as well.
Right.
So this is all being credited towards, for them, for the banks, for the finance companies to recoup that investment.
Got it.
So it reduces your term. So it's complicated, but it's nice, it's useful. Right? And the Vidyut one is interesting in the sense that while the others are 8-year loans, Vidyut is not a time bound, because in their case, they don't have a minimum mileage. It's how much ever you use, you pay for that much. So that can go beyond 8 years as well, because it's just how much you use. And the interesting thing that I understood in this was, like you would apply for a loan, whatever the usual charges are, like application cost or whatever the fees are, that is the thing. You're not paying any deposit except in the case of Vidyuts.
Okay.
What the amount is can vary, and what rate you are charged by them, whether it's 3.5, 375, 4, 5 rupees a kilometer, whatever it is, can vary depending on your credit rating.
Oh, so very
Right?
well
So
done.
that factor is the other thing that you have to keep in mind.
Okay.
So how they think about it will be, no, if your credit rating is not good, I have to charge you a high interest, which means your monthly payment I'm expecting from you instead of that 5,000 is maybe 6,000 rupees. So your cost per kilometer then has
So
gone
your
up.
best case scenario is what you just detailed.
Correct.
But if your credit isn't great, then this is not your scenario.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it's a very, it is a good way to take a big cost out of the car. Right?
Yeah.
And simplify things. And this may not make such a big difference in the case of the Windsor. I think what it allowed MG to do, and I think that's the thing they really went for. They wanted to create this disruption and get to the 10 lakh rupee mark. Instead, if they'd just come with a 50 kilowatt hour version, things would have been a bit different and the communication would have been, the message would have been slightly diluted. So they went to make a big splash here, which they did. But I think the real Windsor that I would want is the one with the larger battery pack, which will come later. And then when you look at BAS, with that being more expensive, let's say instead of 3.5, it's 4.5 lakhs, right? And then you look at these plans and you'll say, okay, well,
Yeah, this makes sense.
this makes more and more sense, right? So that's the BAS side of it. Would you buy this outright without the loan? 100% you can. In which case, you can get finance for this car from any financier that you want if you're buying it outright. But if you are looking to buy a Windsor on finance, you have to take a loan from one of these 3, 4.
For the BAS.
No, if you're taking a loan and you want BAS,
Then it's 4.
then it's those 4.
If you're taking a loan, you're taking a loan from anyone.
Correct. If you're buying it outright, then you can buy from anyone. Then it's not an issue. Sorry, I confused that. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to buy this. And to me, it really does feel like if you're looking to get it, you could just as well buy it outright. It's not such a big deal, right? Considering the warranty and everything. So this feels automatically like
That's because battery as a service in this case is just a marketing term. It's actually battery as a loan. And if you think about it as battery as a loan, then you'll immediately understand the transaction you're up for.
Yeah, I think battery as a service in its truest form happens when you're swapping, I guess.
Yeah, and you don't own this battery. I mean, at the end of the day, they're still going to stick you and say, no, this is your battery now, right? So it's not a service.
Correct.
It's a slightly horrifying mangling of the term, but it is an interesting way to present it. But effectively, what they're saying is we've split the vehicle into 2 parts. You can get the whole vehicle if you like, as usual, pay the full price or take a loan, that's fine. But if you don't want to pay that much upfront, then the battery component of this vehicle, we can give it to you on loan, which means eventually you will own that battery pack.
Yeah.
So we spread the cost of the battery ownership over some time, but you still end up owning a battery, which is exactly the opposite of battery as a service.
So I'll tell you what the dream scenario in that would be. Let's say you were to buy a Windsor, you paid 10 lakh rupees. The company says you will give me a deposit of 1 lakh of rupees. You get a battery pack with the car and the battery is swappable. And every time I need to, I just swap the battery for something else. So I'm just paying for the every time I replace the battery for a battery with charge on it.
Yeah, so I pay for the effort of changing the battery and I pay for the charge that is in that new battery that is coming into my car, but that's my moving cost. But I don't ever own the physical battery. In this particular BAS, you're going to end up owning a battery.
Yeah. And until we have like two-wheelers, we'll see battery swaps.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be lovely to see who works it out best, because that will be the true BAS experience.
Yes. So it's not actually BAS, it is actually BAS kya?
Yeah. So, okay. So on that, I think it really will make a difference to somebody who's buying a Comet, because the Comet's become like 5 lakh rupees. Right? So it becomes like a no-brainer in terms of mobility. Right? You can buy it for 5 lakhs and you can keep paying for the battery through these EMIs and runs over 8 years. So
Do you have the same plan for the Comet also?
yeah.
Now?
So they have the same thing for the Comet. They have the same thing for the ZS EV. So all of them have become more accessible.
Therefore, it's not battery as a service, it's battery as a loan.
And it's a very valid point. What was I saying? Damn it.
You were saying that the battery on loan service is available on the Comet,
Yeah.
on the ZS.
Yeah. But the one thing that they don't have as of now, which the Windsor does, is the lifetime warranty. And the lifetime warranty is applicable to the first owner. If you become the second owner, then the warranty is a standard warranty, which is 8 years, 160,000 kilometers.
So if you're going to be buying an 8-year-old MG Windsor, be careful.
Yeah, correct. So interesting, I think, how they've gone about disrupting this space. I think it's fair to say that they have managed to crack the pricing, even with the battery as a core cost of the car. The battery pack is also being assembled right now in India, but of course the aggregates would be coming from outside.
At the cost of sounding cynical, but wouldn't a Chinese product have a price advantage would your expectation be that they would have a price advantage? It would be one of their cards to play.
Of course.
Right.
I mean, they've got the scale on home turf.
Yeah.
So the sourcing is in their hands. So of course they have an advantage. There's no two ways about it.
Good. I'm glad that they're using their strengths.
Yeah. And for me, it's clear that it's not just them getting the pricing right. In this case, the respect for them is because they've got a lot of the details right, which make this not just a value proposition, but a good machine.
Right.
Right. And I think that says a lot. And I would have loved to see this as a strong hybrid version or a petrol car and see what it would have been like then. That would have been even cooler for me, right? It's great that they're playing the EV game. And this is one thing that we'll keep saying. The other technologies are technologies that are harder to master. EVs are much easier to master. And the Chinese have got a head start on that. And they are using it to their advantage.
Absolutely. And why shouldn't they?
Why shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And as for the entire argument about this being a Chinese car, right? And Desh Bhakti and all of that, the number of times I've seen an MG Hector with an army sticker on the back tells me that I don't really need to get into that conversation. Yeah. People spend where they see value.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair for you to decide where you see that value. Until the government says, no, you can't do that, or somebody can't create that. And let's clear this up also. SAIC owns 49% of MG Motor India. The rest of it is owned by JSW, Indian investors, domestic investors, the MG dealerships, and MG employees. So they have distributed that ownership as well. And I mean, that's
interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Any queries?
No, I think we have a good picture, and I think all the rest of the details will be at view and balance when we drive it and compare it to something.
Okay. Before you do your superb smooth wrap, one clarification: the infotainment screen in the low variant is 10 inches, not 14. And if there are some other such misses, we'll fix it through the graphics, because there are lots of details which I just realized.
Which you don't have to say, you can just do it.
Yeah. So auto headlamps, auto wipers, standard. So like small things like that. Which is why.
That's because the buttons are so hard to press, they had to have an automatic no.
That's actually a valid point. You won't want to fiddle through the buttons to get to headlamps, man.
See?
The wipers, there is a stock, but it has auto wipers. The auto headlamps is for that reason. And yeah, LEDs, everything from the get-go. So it's good. Okay, all yours.
There's a lot to talk about, but let's begin at the beginning. Kartik drove the MG Windsor around Gurugram, slightly outside Gurugram, on the highway and on broken roads. And fundamentally, he's really impressed by this electric van. And I mean the words electric and van because they define what this vehicle is. MG is talking about this being Nexon-ish, but this is definitely a bigger car, think Creta-sized. But the battery packs are smaller, so the range is going to be a little bit less than the Nexon today. And Kartik anticipates he saw about 200, 210 in the real world, mixed conditions. Most people driving the Windsor is going to see 220 to 240 at the maximum with this battery pack. Internationally, there seems to be a version that would get much closer to 300, maybe even over 300. We would love to see that model come to India too. But we sort of know why that didn't come, because MG needed to make a statement about price and about their new idea called battery as a service, which is a little bit of a bait and switch, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Now, what is really nice about the car is it's a big, spacious car, and you will be comfortable inside the car no matter which of the three variants you pick. And they're all 1 lakh rupees apart, so it's a very easy range to parse. And Karthik says the bottom version is well equipped enough for you to think of it as the real alternative and not opt for the more expensive options if you don't want to. All the three cars have the same motor, same range, same battery packs and all. It's just the trim levels that change, and they're all well equipped. And it's not like the top version doesn't have enough. It does. Now, if you take the top version, you'll see these really fancy looking seats. They are decent, but they're not as comfortable as you expect, because all that poofiness and all, it does get in your way a little bit. But they are the ventilated leatherette seats, which is good. The middle model doesn't have ventilation, which makes the leatherette feel much worse, which is why he'd prefer you avoided the middle model. The bottom version has fabric seats, which are just fine. Another interesting feature of this car is it does have a panoramic glass roof, but it is not a sunroof. No children are going to be thrown out of this roof. And it means you have that sense of premium without it affecting the function of the car. And it's important because the AC on this car is not the most effective air conditioning that he's ever tried. It was a hot day in Gurugram, and every time he was under the clouds, the cabin used to cool off. But every time the sun came back, it became quite a bit hotter. Some of it is the sunroof, most of it is in the windows, which don't seem to have UV cut glasses, which cut a little bit of the...
Most of it is the windows. The sunroof is doing its job.
Yeah, so I'm saying the sunroof would add to the problems if the AC is not too effective, is my point there. We can't get a confirmation from MG as to whether there is UV cut glass or not. It felt like it wasn't there, and it made the AC feel less effective on a hot day. Now, between the battery pack, between the range that it offers you, and between the heat in the cabin on a hot day, it's increasingly sounding more and more like an urban vehicle rather than something that you'd be able to take outside the city comfortably and casually whenever you felt like. This is a 5-seater car. Some of the battery pack sticks out under the front seat, so you can't even really stretch out properly. So it's not the most comfortable car you can be out on the highway for a long distance on. The front seats are fine. Now, it is a Chinese car, but it is a very well-equipped and very well-made Chinese car, to the point where the fake wood actually looks like real wood. And when Karthik reached out to touch it, he was expecting to feel a texture there, but it wasn't there, at which point he realized, hey, wait a minute. But it comes together really well. This is a nice cabin. And if you take the top version, you get this enormous 15.4 inch screen. And Karthik made the mistake of saying 15 inches is massive, which I know you're going to have a field day with. I'm requesting you not to. But the bottom version has a 10-inch screen, and there's a 7-inch driver's infotainment. It's actually just information display that sits behind the steering wheel. And in that sense, this is a well-appointed, well-equipped car. Airbags, hill hold, etc. Most of it is standard across variants. You can look up the details, and we'll have even more details when we do the view story. There is no ADAS function. Easy. What is difficult is the UI UX layout, because the touchscreen and the buttons on the steering wheel control almost everything on the car. And in the documentation for the product that was shared in the WhatsApp group that is usually formed, there was a section on which button to press to get the car to do what. And Karthik says this is genuinely going to be a stumbling block if you're going to be sharing this car with family members, because each of them is going to have to learn a completely new way to operate some of the really basic functions of the car. And we can't see why it has to be so complicated at all, especially given that the rest of the car is so simple in appeal and so direct in feel. And what I mean by that is he really enjoyed driving the car. It is soft when it needs to be, it is firm when it needs to be, which means high-speed control as well as low-speed bump absorption both work really well, and he was really happy to drive the car. And when you start to push the car, if you're trying to go fast, there is a very clear sense of now you're approaching the limit and you need to back off. You're not going to get surprised by this car, which is an excellent attribute for the car to have. It also has a very, very well-tuned regen system. It's slightly tweakable to your preferences. But again, he said it felt natural to the point where you just start using it and you won't have to think about it, which is very rare for an electric car today. And in that sense, this is a Chinese car. They have a lead on the world in electric vehicles. They have advantages of scale as well as technology, and they're using it to make the Windsor even more persuasive. More power to them. And now I want to talk about battery as a loan, which is the actual term for what MG calls battery as a service. Now, the prices of the Windsor are really good. What you need to know is 3.5 lakhs of that price roughly is the battery, and you can take a loan for that 3.5 lakh rupees if you like and lower your initial cost. The trick here is if you're buying the vehicle outright, which means battery, vehicle, everything, I just want a loan, you can take this loan from anyone you like. But if you're buying the vehicle outright, but you'd like to take the battery component as a loan, it's called battery as a service for some reason, which must be, let's see, marketing. Battery as a service, bait and switch.
Wait and switch.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So if you're going in for the bait and switch model, what you're effectively doing is you're saying, I will not pay upfront for the battery. I will take that as a loan, which is why it's not a service. What a service means is I'm paying for the privilege of not owning the battery. MG will continue to own the battery and they'll be able to swap this battery whenever I feel like for whatever my requirement is. And I'd pay for the logistics cost of that swap, not the battery itself. In this case, what is happening is there are 4 financiers involved, all 4 of whom will give you a different structured loan, at the end of which you will end up owning your battery. And that's why it's not a service, it's battery as a loan. But under this is actually a very good idea, because the structures in which you pay this battery back is very clever, and it does seem to be, at least on the face of it, extremely customer friendly. For example, there is a mileage quota, and if you go over the mileage quota, you pay more, but this more that you pay is taken away from your loan and it ends up reducing your tenure, so it's not a negative for you automatically. And there is the 4th plan by an organization called Vidyut. That's the plan where there is no initial payment. You pay a little bit more throughout your life, but it is totally dependent on your use pattern, and when you're done with paying the thing, the battery is yours. And there is no loan period to this. The others are 8-year loans, but this can be as long as you need it to be. No stress at all. All of these instruments are tied to your credit rating, so the better your credit rating is, the more it will come close to the numbers MG will show you on their website. That's the best case scenario. The lower your credit rating is, the more money you'll pay for this loan, which is not going to be obvious on the website, because, I mean, battery as a service, battery as a loan, you can see where this is going. Now, despite this, despite our reservations about how it is being presented to you, it's a clever idea, and it's an idea that has been extended to the Comet and to the ZS. And you can do the same battery loan thing with those 2 cars, which again confirms the point. It's not a service. It's just a very clever loan. On the face of it, it's a loan that would benefit you in some ways. Explore that idea if you like.
Yep.
Right? That's my quick summary. Question, crash test ratings?
Nothing here.
Nothing yet. And one more question. You said the Nexon EV had one of the best second rows.
Yeah.
Is the Windsor above, below?
Knee room and all, it's a lot more in the Windsor. But the Nexon, you know, just the generosity of the seat, how high it is, how long it is, all of that is still a reference point for that space.
So space, Nexon is not ahead, but general comfort, Nexon is still ahead.
Yeah, that's going to be really good.
When is the Windsor SUV coming?
Windsor SUV?
Oh, well, why not? It'll be called the MG Vector.
Vector?
Why not, if the Hector is there?
So on this, you can safely assume on this platform,
on the skateboard,
more things will come. And with the more powerful motors, with the larger battery pack, all of that. And if they are engineered like this,
you'll be happy. So tell us what names of castles in the United Kingdom you'd like to see as the names of these forthcoming vehicles, because hey, why not?
Why? Let's look at next one should be Indian castle, yeah.
No, it's a British brand. How dare you? How dare you? You've already made too many Kohinoor jokes for our taste. We will lock you in the British Museum basement along with the Kohinoor if you continue like this.
I'll feel at home.
We will create a company for you to be called the Waste India Company, because you're such a waste.
I don't roll this one, man. Okay, cool. Any other questions? I feel like I may have missed out on something. We'll just cover it. Ask us whatever you want in the comments. We'll get back to you the best we can. I think we would have missed out on some of the details in terms of equipment and stuff like that. But the idea is that the bigger vehicle aspect of it, there was a lot more to talk about, which I think we have done. Yeah.
Right. So the impression I'm getting is that MG does have a persuasive line of electric vehicles now, where we know that the Comet has very powerful strengths and known weaknesses. The MG Windsor seems to be on the same kind of path within a different taste and flavor and space, whatever. And the MG ZS similarly had its own charm and its own issues. Would that be a good place for MG to be in terms of having an electric vehicle spread, or Tata is still like, everything is Tata on the electric front?
No, if this is the starting point, and I would look at this as the real starting point, because what they had up till now, let's say the ZS, and the Comet is also, let's say, okay, a newer take. I think the Windsor really shows what MG wanted to do in terms of the India game plan. Because if you look at the ZS and compare it to the Aster is, the ZS and Aster effectively the same car. One is an EV and the other is the ice
Correct.
version, right? They're just called different names. The Aster is nowhere near as convincing. And if you look at the Hector as well, the weaknesses for the Aster, the Hector, are their powertrains. Their turbo petrols are not great. The cars are heavy, and that always penalizes you in terms of fuel efficiency and the core functionality of the car, which is not an issue then in the case of EVs.
You know what I thought of when you said the powertrains aren't great and the vehicles are heavy? Benelli.
There you go. Yeah. So you see that what they have done in the ICE space is not as convincing.
Got
But
it.
the second you move to EVs, and now this feels like a new gen EV, it is a different story altogether.
Right.
So if
So you think even the ZS also updates to this generation of electric technology, etc., so suddenly it will become a much more attractive car.
So ZS, I think the one thing that they need to do is, and what I liked about this was the suspension. The ZS has a lot more performance. It's really good. But what I didn't like so much about the ZS was the way the suspension felt a bit too soft. When you're accelerating in corners, it feels it. I don't like that feeling.
Okay.
Right. And the ZS update is expected, where it should get ADAS. I hope the suspension also gets a change then.
Nice. Okay.
So that's also a good car. No two ways about it. It's the only reason it doesn't look as good today is because of the Windsor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have said anybody looking to spend that kind of money, you definitely should be looking at the ZS because it feels well finished. The powertrain is strong. And then if you're looking to spend more than that, then you again go to the other Chinese, which is the BYD Atto 3.
Right.
And these would be my top, if I'm looking to spend that kind of money, vehicles to look at.
All right. Done?
Yeah, I'm done.
If there's any more questions you have about the MG Windsor, please do leave us a comment. We've asked you a few questions along the way, including which other British castles you'd like to see as names of MG's forthcoming electric vehicles. Please do leave us comments on that. That would be fun to do. And we will hopefully get the Windsor for testing soon, and then you'll have view and balance stories that will flesh out this story further, FAQs, etc. And we're waiting for more stuff to come. Thank you so much for watching.